She walked into the boardroom wearing nothing but an apron, and the most powerful man in the room forgot about $340 million. Celeste Monroe had been the invisible woman on the 32nd floor for 3 months. A black executive chef contracted to cook for men who never learned her name. Seok-Jin Han, chairman, feared across 2 continents, the black koi tattoo ascending the side of his neck, had passed through her kitchen twice a week without once breaking stride. She knew everything about him: the coffee, the silence, the way he never sat until he was sure no one was watching. He knew nothing about her. The biggest acquisition of his career was on the table. The bid clock was live. The boardroom had cleared. And Celeste Monroe, with her brother's tuition bill folded in her apron pocket and 3 months of invisible behind her, made a decision that had absolutely nothing to do with real estate. What happened in that room in 4 minutes changed everything neither of them was prepared to face. But what she couldn't have known, what she had no way of knowing, was that Seok-Jin Han had already been watching long before she ever looked up. And the story she thought she was living was not the story she was actually in. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click Join to become a member and help our channel. The prep kitchen on the 32nd floor smelled like stock and cold marble. Celeste Monroe arrived at 6:30, the way she always did, before the building woke up, before the executive assistants, before the men in tailored suits began moving through the glass corridors like slow weather systems. She had 47 minutes before anyone would need anything from her. She used 15 of them standing at the window in her white chef's jacket, watching the city arrange itself below. 3 months of this. 3 months of arriving before dawn and leaving after the last meeting wrapped. 3 months of cooking for a man who passed through her kitchen twice a week and had never once broken stride to acknowledge that she existed. She knew his preferences by now. No salt at the table, aged vinegar on the side, never overcooked protein. Learned by watching what came back unfinished and what disappeared clean. It was the most she had of him. She had told herself it was enough. The tuition bill was in her apron pocket. 11 days. Darius had no idea how close the edge was. She'd made sure of that. He called on Sundays and talked about sauces, about technique, about a professor who had trained in Lyon, and she listened and told him he was doing well. She was. She told herself that, too. She unfolded the bill once, then folded it smaller and pushed it to the bottom of the pocket. By 8, the floor was running. The board meeting had started at 9. 8 men around the conference table, 3 attorneys, a woman from the acquisition firm, and Seok-Jin Han at the head, back to the window. She caught one glimpse of him as she rolled the service cart past the corridor. Charcoal suit. No tie this morning. The koi fish tattooed dark against his neck. He was looking at something on the table and didn't look up. She went back to her kitchen. By 11:40, the board meeting had been running for nearly 3 hours. Through the corridor wall, she could hear the low register of it. Not words, only the sound of men agreeing. The $340 million waterfront acquisition. She had heard the number 2 weeks ago in passing. Today was the close. She was plating cold service for the post-meeting lunch when the room began to empty. Voices in the corridor. 2 of the attorneys moving toward the elevator. She heard one of them say something about the bid going live in 8 minutes. Through the gap at the hinge of the conference room door, she could see inside. Seok-Jin was still there, standing at the window the way she always stood, back to everything, facing the city. Phone pressed to his ear, the room empty behind him. She stood with the plate in her hands. 3 months. 47 mornings. She knew how he took his coffee, and which chair he used, and that he always removed his jacket before sitting, but never before entering a room. She had cooked for him 43 times without a word in return. Not because she wanted gratitude, because she had wanted something. To exist in his orbit as something other than ambient. She set the plate down. She unzipped her chef's jacket and hung it on the hook inside the kitchen door. She adjusted the white cotton apron, tied at the back of her neck, knotted at the small of her waist, and smoothed the front. Her shoulders were bare. Her back was bare. The curls fell loose around her face. She picked up nothing. She walked down the corridor in her kitchen clogs and pushed open the conference room door. He heard it. He turned. She closed the door behind her and stood where she was, not crossing her arms, not looking away. He was very still, the kind of still that costs something. The bid clock was open on his laptop at the end of the table, white numbers on black, visible across the length of the room. She could see it counting down. She didn't look at it. Neither did he. The phone lowered from his ear. The call ended. She didn't know who was on the other end. She would think about that later. 7 seconds passed in which neither of them moved. "You have exactly one reason," he said, very quietly, "why I shouldn't have you removed from this building." She looked at him steadily. "You've never once looked at me." He looked at her. On his laptop, the bid clock reached 0. The session timed out. The screen shifted to a gray prompt. Unconfirmed, expired. $340 million, lapsed mid-bid. He hadn't moved. He hadn't looked at the screen. The room held its breath. She left 4 minutes later. She picked up her chef's jacket from the hook, put it on, buttoned it from the bottom up. She finished plating the cold service. Her hands were steady. She wasn't sure how. He didn't call anyone. No assistants were summoned. When she wheeled the service cart past the corridor 20 minutes later, the conference room was dark. The laptop was closed. He was gone. That night, the service cart came back from the private dining room with every plate clean. There was a folded note on the tray. 2 words, handwritten. Your name. She didn't respond that evening. The next morning, she wrote her name on the bottom of the dish receipt and left it with the breakfast service. Celeste Monroe. That was all. He didn't come to the kitchen for 2 days. When he did, it was late, past 9, after the floor had emptied, and he came through the side door, the one the cleaning staff used, not the main corridor. He stood at the island and looked at what she was prepping. She didn't stop working. "Celeste," he said, like he was making sure of it. "That's right," she said. "Why did you come into that room?" She looked up. "Because I was tired of not existing." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "The deal you interrupted." "I didn't interrupt anything." "You cost me $340 million. She met his eyes. "Did I?" He left without answering. But he came back the following night, and the night after that. It had a specific texture, the thing between them. Not soft, not safe. More like 2 people circling something neither had a name for. He didn't reach. She didn't press. But the kitchen became a different room. The only space in the building where he sat on a counter stool and stopped performing authority. Where she talked about her brother, about sauce reduction, about a summer spent cooking in a church kitchen in Atlanta when she was 15. Where he said almost nothing, and somehow said everything. 3 weeks in, she heard the phone call. She was between the cold storage and the prep kitchen when she caught Young-Soo's voice through the partially open door of the small meeting room. She stopped. She should have kept walking. Bernard Walsh. The Yoon Network, a fraudulent title clause buried in the closing documents, a lien that would have activated 6 months post-close, handing the Yoon family first claim on the entire Manhattan waterfront block. Every attorney in the room had cleared the documents. The acquisition firm hadn't flagged it. If the deal had closed on schedule, on the day of the bid, Suk Jin Han would have handed his entire Manhattan operation to a rival family before the year was out. Young-Soo said, "He still doesn't know it was the chef." Celeste stepped back from the door. She walked quietly to her kitchen and stood at the prep counter with both hands flat on the marble. She had walked into a boardroom in an apron because she was tired of being invisible. She had stopped a $340 million acquisition by accident, by want. And in doing so, she had saved a man who ran an empire from losing everything to a trap dressed as a real estate closing. She hadn't known. She hadn't known any of it. She didn't tell him. She didn't know how to begin. The envelope arrived on a Monday, slipped under the kitchen door between 6 and 6:40, in the window between when the night cleaning crew left and when she arrived. Plain white, her name in block print on the front. She opened it over the trash can, old habit, and looked at what was inside. A photograph. 4x6, glossy. Darius coming out of the Culinary Academy's main entrance, shot from across the street, close enough to see the backpack strap, the fold of his collar, the way he walked with his shoulders slightly back. Someone had been watching from a careful distance. She set the photograph on the counter. She looked at it for a moment, then she folded it once and put it in her apron pocket. She prepped the morning service. She made the stock. She cut the vegetables. She did not shake. Young-Soo came at 11. He came through the main corridor this time, not the side door. He carried a white envelope, sealed, and set it on the prep counter without sitting down. He said, "Your contract has been terminated, effective today, by order of Mr. Han. The envelope contains 2 months additional payment. A car will take you wherever you need to go. You have 30 minutes to collect your things." She looked at him. Did he say why? Young-Soo looked at a point just past her shoulder. No. She took the envelope. She looked at the prep station. Stock still reducing on the burner. Mise en place laid out for lunch service. She turned off the burner. She wiped the counter. She took off her apron and folded it in thirds the way her grandmother had taught her and set it on the stool. She rode the elevator down 32 floors with the photograph of Darius in her left hand and the sealed envelope in her right. The car was a black sedan. The driver didn't speak. She watched the building disappear in the side mirror and stood on her sidewalk for a full minute before she went inside. She had let herself want something. It was gone. She did not understand why, and she told herself that was the worst part. It wasn't. 11 months later, her accountant called about a trust document she hadn't arranged. She drove to the office and sat across the desk and read the paper twice. An anonymous educational trust established 14 months ago, 2 months before the waterfront bid date, 10 weeks before she ever walked into that conference room. It had been funding Darius's Culinary Academy tuition in full from her first month at Han & Associates. Payments went directly to the Academy bursar, flagged as a scholarship. Darius had assumed it was merit-based. She had assumed she was simply better at managing money than she realized. The trust's registered agent, a shell company incorporated in Delaware. The shell company's registered address, the 32nd floor of 1 Hanover Place. Han and Associates Group. She sat with the document in her hands for a long time. He had known who she was before she ever looked up. He had been watching, not in the cold calculation of an employer, but in the particular, deliberate way of a man who sees someone carrying twice the weight anyone around her can see and decides, quietly, to make one thing lighter. He hadn't done it to bind her. He had done it before she could refuse it, before she could repay it, before she even knew. He had terminated her contract not because he was finished, because the photograph of Darius under the kitchen door was real, because removing her from the building was the only move that kept her out of it, because a man who runs an empire knows when someone has to be protected from the empire, and he had chosen her safety over his own access to her. She drove back to Harlem, service in an hour. She prepped in silence. She moved through the kitchen the way she always had, certain, economical. She plated the amuse-bouche. She checked the lamb. She made sure everything was where it should be. 30 minutes before service, the front door opened. She came out to check the dining room. She always did before the host arrived. She stopped in the doorway. Sok-Jin Han was at the bar. Seat 11, the walk-in spot she always kept open. Black overcoat. A dark crew neck beneath it. Not a suit. The koi fish tattoo visible above the collar. Exactly as she remembered it. No Young-soo. No entourage. He was looking at the menu she'd written by hand on a small card. He looked up. She looked at him. He was different from the man she'd met in a glass building above Manhattan. Still controlled. Still, but different. The geometry of someone who had made a decision and was done deliberating. She walked to the bar. She set a small plate in front of him. Honey-glazed short rib, single piece. A dish she'd been developing all month, not yet named. She put down a fork and a cloth napkin. "You're going to have to actually talk to me this time," she said. He looked at the plate, then at her. Something crossed his face. Not quite a smile. Not quite not one. "I know," he said. He picked up the fork. She went back to her kitchen. Through the pass-through window, she could see him. Seat 11, black overcoat, eating in the particular silence of a man who is, for the first time in a long time, exactly where he wanted to be. Service started. The room filled. The night ran the way good nights run. Momentum, not chaos. When she came out after closing, the bar was empty. The plate was clean. On the receipt pad beside seat 11, in handwriting she recognized from a 2-word note left on a service tray 14 months ago, he had written a phone number. Below it, one line. "When you're ready." She stood in the quiet of her own room and read it twice. She folded it once and put it in her apron pocket. There was no rush. He already knew that, too. She folded the tuition bill and put it in her apron pocket. She folded the photograph of Darius and put it in her apron pocket. She folded his note, "When you're ready," and put it in her apron pocket. 3 months of early mornings. 47 services. Stock simmering before the building woke up. Everything she carried in that apron. Every burden, every bill, every quiet act of devotion to everyone around her. Tucked away, invisible, carried forward. And when someone finally asked her why she had walked into that room, she gave the most honest answer a woman can give. "I was tired of not existing." Maybe you know that feeling. Not on the 32nd floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, but in your own mirror, in your own bathroom at 6 in the morning before the rest of the house wakes up. You have been running service for everyone around you. Perfectly, economically, with everything in its place. And somewhere between the early mornings and the things you fold and carry in your pocket, the woman you see when no one else is watching has been waiting. Tired of being last. Tired of being invisible even to herself. Here is something Celeste learned from a man named Seokjin Han, even if she never heard him say it out loud. In Korean culture, the woman who shows up the most consistently, the one who carries the kitchen before anyone else arrives, is the one who deserves the most intentional, layered, deliberate care. Not as a luxury, as a practice. Korean Glass Skin Secrets for Black Queens 45+ was built for the woman who has been feeding everyone else and is finally, unapologetically, ready to sit at her own table. A complete K-beauty system designed specifically for melanin-rich, mature skin. The skin the beauty industry spent decades looking past. AM and PM routines built on Korean layering philosophy. The 15 star ingredients that actually work for your biology. Glass hair rituals for type 4 hair. A Jjimjilbang Spa experience in your own bathroom. 12 botanical teas that glow you from the inside out. Because when Celeste came out after closing and that bar stool was empty, she didn't wait for someone else to tell her she was ready. Scan a QR code on your screen right now, or completed Agent 662 that go in, or she had believed that used to be ascribed diability in yours. Give you one back to this from what people or developed. She didn't wait for someone else to tell her she was ready. Scan the QR code on your screen right now, or completed Agent 662 that go in on Light. Scan the QR code on your screen right now, or complete the Medical Institute to speak what for. Because when Celeste came out after closing and that bar stool, or complete the fact in the bottom skin, she didn't wait for someone else. Her kitchen, her service, her glow. Yours too. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever worked so hard in a room that never saw you, and found out much later that someone had been watching all along? Have you ever made the most audacious decision of your life without knowing it would change far more than just you? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about invisible courage, impossible love, and quiet devotion, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click Join to become a part of our community and help the channel.